Coming up on Tech News today, was Apple's announcement worth all the hype? We'll tell you about it, plus what Zuckerberg really said about HTML5 and Intel's pitch to save the PC. All that and more coming up.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is TWiT.
Bandwidth for Tech News Today is provided by Cachefly at CACHEFLY.com.
This is Tech News Today for Wednesday, September 12th. Why is that day important? 2012. Tech News Today is brought to you by Ring Central. We do everything in the cloud. That's why I love our cloud-based phone system by Ring Central. Zero startup cost, and Ring Central is $20 a month per user. Try it now with a 30-day risk-free trial. Buy one desk phone and get a second phone free up to 20 phones. Call 800-543-9980 or visit ringcentral.com and use our promo code TWiT. And by Gazelle, the fast and simple way to sell your iPhone, iPad, MacBook, or Android smartphones. Find out what your gadget is worth and get cash to upgrade to that latest iPhone at Gazelle.com. Welcome to Tech News Today. I'm Tom Merritt.
I'm Sarah Lane.
I'm Iyaz Akhtar.
And I'm Jason Howell.
And this is the show where we keep you up to date on the top stories in the news of technology, starting with the top 10 stories in the news fuse. Apple's Tim Cook and friends took the stage today at the Yerba Buena Center for the Arts to announce, as we expected, a new iPhone. It's called the iPhone 5, has a 4-inch screen, and including a bunch of other improvements to the camera, has an A6 processor, 720p front-facing camera, 3 microphones, front, bottom, and back, and a new dock connector called Lightning, a 9-pin connector that's reversible, will be available starting September 14th for pre-order, shipping September 21st, $199 for 16 gig, $299 for 32 gig, $399 for 64 gig, and the older phones get cheaper. The 4S is now going to be available for $99, and the iPhone 4 will be available on contract for free. Apple also announced new tweaks to iTunes coming to iOS September 19th and to Mac and PC in late October, and tweaks to the iPod line. We've got a new Nano 7th generation. It looks a lot like the iPod Mini with a touch screen and a 2.5-inch display, 16 gigs for $149 coming in October. New iPod Touches have 32 gigs for $299, 64 gig for $399 coming in October, and available in 5 colors. We're going to talk about those a little bit detail in our discussion section, along with the new EarPod earphones. Those are the big announcements from Apple.
Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg spoke candidly at TechCrunch's Disrupt conference yesterday in his first interview since Facebook went public back in May. He said a few things. Investing so heavily in HTML5 was a mistake, possibly the company's biggest, but that the company is going to make more money in mobile than they ever have on the desktop. Facebook stock has lost nearly half its value since that IPO. More than $50 billion has been lost from Facebook's total market value. But Zuckerberg says now is not only a good time for people to join Facebook, but for current employees to double down and stay.
Double down. Is he gambling there? Oh, big controversy there. At the Intel Developers Forum, Intel released details about its Haswell chips that are due out in the middle of next year. Intel says it's going to be super power efficient with one version running at 10 watts. That's half as much as current Ivy Bridge processors. Intel also upped the graphics capabilities in Haswell. The company showed Skyrim running on high settings at 1920 by 1080 resolution, and it ran smoothly.
Intel also showed off a boatload of PCs, taking good advantage of their new chips, the most buzzworthy being the Dell XPS 13 Ultrabook with Nuance Communications Dragon Assistant Beta. Users will be able to speak to their laptops to search the web, find content, play music, check email, post to social networks, and more. Best part, to activate voice commands, you have to wake the dragon by saying, this is serious, you have to say, "Hello, dragon." And that activates your voice. If you want to turn it off, you say, "Go to sleep." Hopefully, that can be customized to something you say in Dothraki. Dell will be the first to ship with Dragon Assistant Beta by the end of 2012.
If you're saying go to sleep, wouldn't Wake Up Dragon make more sense? I don't know. Whatever. I don't speak dragon. Yahoo will officially close the multi-billion-dollar sale of half of its assets in China's Alibaba group by this time next week, say sources familiar with the matter. The detail is said to be announced next Wednesday. Alibaba will pay Yahoo $7.6 billion to buy back 20%. Yahoo still owns another 20% of Alibaba. Yahoo will get $7.1 billion in the transaction, as well as a $550 million payout related to the ending of licensing fees that Alibaba has paid annually to Yahoo.
I thought she didn't do anything half-assets.
Oh, Tom.
Bump.
Da-da-da.
The Shanghai Evening Post sent one of its journalists to work undercover in the Foxconn Taiwan factory to find out how the new iPhone is made. The reporter didn't like the dorm conditions, saying it smelled like garbage, sweat, and foam. There is an on-site hospital, gym, post office, and library on the facilities, though. As for the actual iPhone production, the reporter had to cover up ports on the back plate to stop paint from being sprayed on it into the next process. The reporter quit after 10 days. The factory has to produce 57 million iPhones within 1 year.
Just goes to show journalists can't do hard work. Hate Bad Design tipped us off to a story that one of the largest news publications in Denmark reports Spotify is getting into the TV business. Spotify's streaming service for TV and movies would start in the Nordic countries in partnership with HBO Nordic, according to TV2, and they've hired former Comcast executive Mark Berkeley. HBO is launching an internet-only service in Scandinavia later this year.
Microsoft has announced it's added 82 additional markets for developers, which more than doubles support towards enabling what they call developer opportunity worldwide. In Microsoft's words, we will just keep going. Microsoft is also announcing additional subscription program offerings for developers. All eligible MSDN subscribers receive a free 1-year Windows Store developer account as part of their benefits. Also, a program for students called DreamSpark waives the subscription fee. And Microsoft has other special offers for businesses in their BizSpark program as well.
Acer announced it will release a smartphone in China running the Aliyun operating system developed by China's e-commerce heavyweight Alibaba, who we just heard about. Aliyun launched July 2011, runs web-based apps stored on remote servers, similar to Google's Chrome OS. Acer's Cloud Mobile A800 smartphone goes on sale Friday in China for 2,999 yuan. That's roughly $470 US.
It must be new camera season because Sony just introduced some new cameras. Let's spotlight a few. First up is the CyberShot DSC RX1. It's a full-frame compact camera. Now, a full-frame sensor is about the same size as a frame of 35mm film, which means really nice photos. It's going to run you about $2,800. Sony also introduced the first full-frame camcorder, the Handycam NEX VG900 at $3,300. And if those are too expensive, $1,000 will get you the new Alpha NEX 6 with a lens. That's a whole kit.
This episode of Tech News Today brought to you by Ring Central. When we built the TWiT studios last year, we didn't want to do a lot that required a bunch of expensive wires to be strung any more than possible. We want to do as much stuff through the cloud. We store documents there, we hold meetings there, and we didn't want a big old PBX system cluttering up the basement. So Russell, our IT guy, said we could get a cloud-based phone system, and that's what we did with Ring Central. It's a no-brainer. We love Ring Central. Zero startup cost, no PBX hardware to install or maintain. Allows you to easily customize all your call handling. We love getting our voicemail over the web through Ring Central. Comes right into your email. You can even get all your fax messages. If somebody insists on sending you a fax, now you have a way to do it. We can have it faxed right to our smartphones. Ring Central offers all-inclusive pricing as low as $20 a month per user, and you can start right now with a 30-day risk-free trial, and they have a special offer for our listeners. When you buy one desk phone, you get a second phone free up to 20 phones. So call this number. This is the number for listeners of TWiT, 800-543-9980. That's 800-543-9980. One more time, in case you're busy writing it down and you missed it, 800-543-9980. Or you can also go to ringcentral.com and use the promo code TWiT. Ring Central, we thank them for their support of Tech News Today. Now, joining us for the show today, Kevin Purdy, author of The Complete Android Guide. Thanks for joining us this morning, Kevin.
Thank you for having me.
Now, Kevin, we are going to be doing a little time travel like we did last week with the Amazon announcement. So up next for the on-demand listeners who download the podcast will be our discussion of the Apple announcement. But you're not going to be here for that. So pretend like you were there and tell us, give us your best guess of what you think we're going to hear about.
So this is the pre-taped call-in show.
Yeah, right.
All right, yeah. So mine is really boring, and it is based on an aggregate of the rumors so far. It's a 4-inch screen as opposed to a 3.5. It has a metal back. It is a little longer, and it has LTE, and that's about it. Maybe some, small processor and camera improvements like always, but it is basically a very familiar iPhone 5, and it's available, later in September, and no NFC.
And through the magic of time travel and space travel, let's see how close Kevin Purdy got. They just finished up the Apple announcement. We got an iPhone 5, runs LTE, 7.6 millimeters thick, 112 grams, going to be available on Sprint, AT&T, and Verizon here in the U.S. Rogers, TELUS, Bell, Fido, and Virgin in Canada. Dual Wi-Fi, 2.4 and 5 gigahertz, A6 processor. They claim it'll be 2 times faster. A nice camera in there with faster image capture, built-in image processor in the A6, and it's got that 9-pin connector, which is reversible, actually. Apple creating accessories for the adapters, so you'll probably have to buy that separately. And coming in 2 colors, black and white, raw aluminum on the back. The black one has the black anodized backing. It will be $199 for the 16 gig on contract, $299 for the 32 gig, $399 for the 64 gig, and the iPhone 4 becomes free on contract, $99 for the 4S. Pre-orders are going to start September 14th, ship September 21st. U.S., Canada, U.K., Germany, France, Australia, Japan, Hong Kong, and Singapore to begin with, and 20 more countries next month. Coming out September 19th is iOS 6. So if you have an old iPhone, you get iOS 6 a couple days before the new one ships. They also announced new iTunes features. Those will be coming to iOS along with iOS 6 September 19th and late October for Mac and PC. And new iPods. We'll get to those in a second. Let's start with the iPhone. Playing the part of Kevin Purdy, Leo Laporte has joined us through the
Kevin nailed it, did he not?
Pretty much, yeah.
There was nothing surprising. The only things that we didn't see, the headphone jacks on the top,
Actually, the headphone jack's on the bottom. Some of the graphics were changed.
So we're looking at the Apple website right now, Iyaz, and you're saying that
it's on the bottom.
Jack's on the bottom.
Yeah,
so
chat room's going crazy about that.
There we go.
Well, that's interesting.
Why did they not mention it? That's a big difference.
I guess it's not a big a deal. They don't want to call attention to it.
But they've made a conscious change.
There it is. It's on the bottom.
I mean, especially with what the new earpods.
Yeah.
Earpods. I'm surprised that they wouldn't have said, here's why we changed it and this is why it's better. Because that's what Apple has to do, is convince us that they've made a decision not for no reason, but because it's better.
And not to call too much attention to the Steve Jobs versus post-Steve Jobs era, but he was brilliant at that, of taking those small changes and making them sound like amazing revolutionary things.
I think the biggest story here, I mean, there's no surprises, really. LTE, there was some question. NFC, there's no NFC, but there is LTE. But I think the biggest story is the pricing. Apple is not going to follow the chase to the bottom that Amazon and Google have inaugurated with $200 tablets. I think that makes sense. And I'm talking mostly here about the iPods because, of course, iPhones are always going to be $200 no matter what. We know that now.
No big surprise.
Did we get a price on the connector from 30 to 9-pin?
They just said they would make them available.
We saw pictures
I'm going to guess
them.
$29.95 because everything is $29.95.
That seems right.
When it comes to the Apple Store. Other than that, it's exactly what everybody predicted. And you can see now why it's so important to Apple to have this secrecy, because you just can't get too excited about.
I'm not that excited, but I feel like there's not a Siri. There's not a thing that they highlighted as being the advantage, other than just the fact that it was pretty. They said it's the most beautiful iPhone we've ever made.
I think if the leaks hadn't been as prominent as they were, the fact that it was bigger would have been a big deal. It's just that we all knew about that so far in advance, and the prototypes that were leaked were pretty accurate.
They were the prototype. They were obviously the actual cases.
So that, I think, that's the big, wow, this is really different. It's going to look different. It's going to feel different. But we've had a lot of time to get used to that.
Yeah, that and a lot of the features that keep showing are iOS 6, which they've shown off a whole bunch of. I mean, there are a couple of other hardware things. There is a nano SIM in there. That the actual iPhone page, there's a lot of text in the iPhone page. Surprisingly, it looks like a magazine ad the way it's structured. But yeah, I guess the leaks were just so accurate that it was just kind of not exactly as exciting. But the thing is, I think that took the wind out of the sails for this announcement, because this is actually a pretty cool phone. It keeps Apple in line with every other super phone that's out there. This does have the A6 processor, which I don't believe is in any other.
I think it's
Apple
dual
products.
core, though. I don't think it's quad core.
But still gives them a chance to go, yeah, we have the specs.
The screen is somewhat smaller and lower resolution, but it is Retina. It's a 4-inch screen, not a 5-inch.
And there's so many phones that are much bigger than that already.
Yeah.
It doesn't strike me as being amazing.
I think it's exactly what you'd expect from Apple, which is a evolutionary product. It's hard to be revolutionary at this point in the life cycle. I think the camera's better. The front camera is certainly better.
Yeah, 720p on that.
But again, they're small improvements. They're not major improvements, and they're in many cases catch-up improvements.
Maybe I'm just jaded. I used to get more excited about new iPhones.
Well, you know, there's also, and I was wondering this as I was walking in, there's only so many times Apple can go to this well. And I mean, how many times have we sat here for an Apple announcement? At some point, it just becomes, yes, it's another Apple announcement instead of it's a big event. And a lot of that goes to secrecy. If they could have, as you say, Sarah, kept this completely quiet, then it might have been a bigger deal. But we knew.
Later iPods are not that exciting either. Same thing. We're seeing an older product. I think that's a great point.
Yeah, I don't think, even if the secrecy thing it's just a different era for Apple.
It is. It is.
And I think
it's a mature product too, and you're seeing this in the computer industry as well. As products become mature, it's harder and harder to do something new, different, exciting. I mean, they you know, the tagline for the iPhone 5 is the biggest thing to happen to iPhone since iPhone.
What does that even mean?
I don't even know what that means. I mean, I think it shows you that it's iteration. This is yet another iPhone. It's thinner, it's lighter, it's a little
It means
bit better.
this is the biggest thing that we've seen since the iPhone changed the game in 2007.
Well, I understand that.
I think it's a little bit silly, but I understand.
There's a lot of refinements in here. That's like Leo was saying. This is mature already, and the thing is, it seems like they've addressed a lot of problems that people had with the usage of this, with the aluminum back instead of glass. The fact that they kept pushing the sapphire crystal on the lens means that you're not going to scratch the lens as easily. Like these little things like that are going to add up. Sticking to that same form factor, putting a larger screen, there's just saying, look, this is the way we think people are going to use this phone. We don't see the need to go to 4.3, 4.7, 5.3. None of that happens at Apple. They are sticking to their guns.
And a lot of emphasis on the inner mechanics of how these phones get built, up into the camera, where they can figure out what backing to put on based on tiny little minute changes. And
that just surprises me. But that's Bob Mansfield. He's very proud of what he's able to do.
Well, I think also the more that they emphasize that, the more people get in their minds, well, maybe it doesn't look that different, but it's so
highly engineered.
well designed. Yeah, it's true. The best of the best. Some people care about that. Of course, iTunes got a big upgrade.
Yeah,
on the iOS side and the desktop side.
They changed the interface entirely. It'll be interesting to play around with that to see.
I think that's right. I don't think there's much to say about iTunes until we use it and to see if it's faster and more.
Maybe the iPods are the most impressive announcement in here. iPod Touch 5th generation, 6.1 millimeters, 4-inch screen, A5 processor, 5-megapixel camera. And as you mentioned, Leo, expensive. 32 gigabytes is $299, 64 gigabyte, $399, available in October.
And the store is still closed. That's what you'll be able to buy, though, if you can get into that store. Also, Apple's showing its strength worldwide, and that's really where Apple has just done so well, much better than anybody, except maybe Android. You'll be able to buy this phone right away in many countries, many more countries a week later. Not, interestingly enough, not in China yet. No announced date for China, which is the biggest market Apple wants to get into.
Well, and there's that company threatening to sue over the design of a new
What's
iPhone.
the name of that company? Starts with an S.
Well, remember Samsung said that they would sue if Apple did an LTE phone.
Samsung.
See, now that's
the name.
Well, no, I'm talking. There's a Chinese company that wants to sue over the trade dress. But you're right. Samsung said they would sue over LTE. I'd forgotten about it.
Yeah.
And I think that may be the biggest usability story about the iPhone 5. Finally, LTE and LTE worldwide. And that's something that Apple absolutely had to do. There's no phone. You wouldn't buy a new high-end smartphone that didn't have LTE these days on Verizon and AT&T.
No, and it was they did all. This is typical of iPhone announcement. They did all the must-have feature inclusions, and they didn't go out on a limb. They didn't choose NFC. It's too early to choose that.
Right.
The only thing we haven't mentioned, the new Nano 7th generation. Which looks a lot like an iPod mini with a wider screen, 2.5-inch display, home button, 7 colors, FM tuner with ability to kind of do pause and rewind on the FM. 16 gigabyte will be $149, available in October. Also has the Lightning connector, the little small connector.
And they stuck with the fitness products inside, so you can still listen to your power song, or you can have a pedometer in there. Bluetooth in there as well. This is actually the biggest redesign that Apple's done on any of their products. I mean, we talk about the iPod and the iPhone.
That's a good point. This is the newest design.
This actually reminds me of a Sony product.
I like it. I like it a lot. I think that's a good-looking product, and it's the sports iPod.
Right.
It's the workout iPod.
$149, 16 gigabyte. I don't believe there's any other variants of capacities for this. But it looks it's that other iPod you carry around when you don't want to break your iPhone.
Other big story was that they're giving away the iPhone 4, and I think that may be, from a marketing point of view, the biggest story, in sales.
Although that's the 3GS was free. So
yeah, but the 4 is a big jump ahead of the 3GS. I think there's a lot of people who've avoided iPhones, and I don't know why people focus on the cost of the phone, because it's the monthly cost that really kills you. But they do, and a free iPhone 4 is going to be a big come-on for a lot of people who haven't bought smartphones yet. And they're going to look and say, well, I mean, I can get an iPhone 4 for free? Okay.
And the other side of that is they didn't announce an unlocked price or availability, which is what I want. Right. I don't want to be on a contract. Right. And a lot of people are moving that way as well.
In fact, T-Mobile hopes more will, because they've said we're going to support the unlocked iPhones.
Well, Leo, we're going to magically transform you back into Kevin Purdy now. Thank you.
I'll take off, but we are doing Mac Break Weekly right after you finish with TNT. So,
all right. And we're going to transport
live, stick around.
Back to the Tech News Today desk now on the on-demand version. All right, let's bring. We're back at our other desk. We've transported through time and space to the Tech News Today set. And let's talk about Mark Zuckerberg at TechCrunch Disrupt yesterday. We don't have enough time to talk about all the things he said. He was making news like crazy.
Yeah, he was a soundbite king. He was animated. He seemed like he was in a good mood. He was wearing shoes and socks, if anyone's paying attention.
Hoodie?
Which he...
Whoa.
What's that?
Hoodie?
No, look at that.
No hoodie?
It was just the T-shirt.
Wow.
Spoke to Mike Arrington on stage for better part of half an hour or so, and he had some very candid words for some of the steps that the company has made. HTML5, Zuckerberg says, was a mistake. He says that set us back 2 years. He says possibly it was the biggest mistake in the company's history.
He obviously forgot about Beacon. HTML5, that's a problem.
Possibly the biggest mistake. He's happy with the iOS rollout of the native app. When pressed, he said, yes, we're going to do the same thing with Android. It is coming soon. We are working on it. He did not give a definitive date, but said, for all intents and purposes, it's coming as soon as possible because that's what they believe they need to do going forward. He says how Facebook performs in the future absolutely depends on mobile. He says mobile is even closer to television than it is to the web when it comes to advertising because, of course, ads can't be placed on the right-hand column of a web page. So clearly, the folks over at Facebook are trying to think outside the box when it comes to mobile. He also says we're going to make more money on mobile than on the desktop, which is interesting because for the last couple of months, we've talked a lot about how they plan to do that.
He almost has to say that, I guess.
I suppose so, but, it's a bold statement. What's interesting is that the stock, Facebook stock, closed up yesterday at $19.43, even rose to $20.32, which is up about 4.5% in after-hours trading, right after Zuckerberg left the stage. So clearly someone listens to these quotes and goes, I think he knows what he's doing. Maybe we ought to buy. This is probably a good time to buy. He said when it comes to the idea that the IPO was a bit of a nightmare, he says, I was disappointed by that. The stock has been hammered, but he says that now is a good time for people to join Facebook. And for the people who are there, because a lot of talk has been given to, if you're at Facebook, is this really the place for you anymore? Is Facebook kind of, in its twilight or in its, the sunset? Has Facebook peaked? He says now is a good time for people to stay, good time for people to double down, start gambling, I guess.
Zynga.
He also pointed out he was expecting more and more of the company's employees to be focused on mobile development and sort of talked a little bit about how product groups in the past at Facebook were fragmented. So you had the mobile team, the mobile core team that was committing 90% of the total code for mobile. He says now we've got product groups that are more specific, but they're more integrated. So we've got the newsfeed group, we've got the mobile group, we've got the platform group, and now there's code coming from a variety of departments, which he says is just healthy. So you don't just have a smaller group of people working on something that's so important. You have a variety of product groups contributing to what's overall the mobile code. He also says when Arrington asked him, are you still coding? Is that something that you're doing on a daily basis? And he said pretty much no. The reason is because I'm just busy doing other things. If I start the code, it kind of turns into something else for someone else to maintain, and that's not really fair. That's not the company motto, right, is that if you start something, you maintain your own code. So he's not actually contributing on it on a day-to-day level.
I want to talk about the HTML5 code. Here's what he said exactly. It's not that HTML5 is bad. I'm actually long-term really excited about it. One of the things that's interesting is we actually have more people on a daily basis using mobile web Facebook than we have. Then he goes on to talk about how it was a strategic mistake to get into it too early. And Kevin, as a developer, what do you think people should take from this? Does it mean that HTML5 should be ignored, or is it still too early? How should we accurately talk about what Zuckerberg said here?
Well, I think if you look at what he's saying, about getting in too early, I think it behooves us to remember that, Facebook is now a publicly traded company that has to report to its shareholders on how it's making money on every avenue that it chooses to exist on. And so, they're a company that has to provide a platform for televisions, for smartphones, tablets, from Android and iOS both. Facebook is on more things than just, computers and phones now. So I can see how you could actually split the hair and say that HTML5 doesn't quite work for Facebook, but it's still an impressive tool. I just loved when Mike Arrington said to him that, your mobile products are some of the worst I've ever seen. And I just I got to watch him respond to it, even if his response was kind of, couched and a little soft. It still was great to see someone tell the Facebook CEO that their mobile products are terrible, because they are.
Yeah, I think Zuckerberg is well coached now. He's much better at these kinds of interviews, and he said all the right things. He said all the things he needed to say. The question is, how much should we believe any of these particular things? I think that's one of the reasons that his quote about HTML5 is getting so much attention, is because it's one of the few times where he admitted, yeah, we screwed up. We were way too early on this.
He also said, when pressed about the existence of a Facebook phone, a secret portion of the company working on a Facebook phone, he said, he didn't say no. He said, this is the wrong strategy. He said that a couple times. It's just the wrong strategy for us. But he didn't say, no, we're not working on a Facebook phone. So,
we're still doing it, but it's the wrong strategy.
We just can't figure out how to make it the right strategy. So it's a bit of a skirting of the question, but seemed at least emphatic that right now it's not a good idea.
I think that has to be there's no phone, because he has 57% of the say. He can kill any project he wants at any given time. It's not like there's enough. Maybe Sheryl Sandberg could try to convince him to go, look, just put it aside that you don't think this is a good strategy. I think it is, unless he's convinced to do something against his own thoughts, which I don't know if Zuckerberg works like that. I mean, he bought Instagram because he wanted it. I think he could arbitrarily kill things if he didn't want it. But if they were going to do a phone, I don't know what they're waiting on. I mean, unless they want all the phone announcements for September to die down, and then we can finally see something else.
You might be right that there are leaks coming out of the company from people who think it's a good idea and are hoping that perhaps momentum, public perception, people saying, yeah, Facebook phone, let's do it, gets to the point where maybe Zuckerberg changes his mind and he's in that majority vote where he's like, no, we're still not doing a Facebook phone.
Or it could also be that they have a department or a team that is specifically charged with continuing to develop what a Facebook phone would be like. You can pull some of that code out. You can pull some of those products out and use them in mobile strategies, use them on things like the Cha-Cha, and never intend to actually make a phone until it becomes strategically the right. It could be a long-term bet where Zuckerberg's like, yeah, I'm not going to say this, obviously. He's never going to say it in person, but we have a team working on it, even though we know that that's not the right way to go about it yet, because that way, when it does make sense, if it ever does, we've already got the team in place. We can turn on a dime, and it's like a research project otherwise. You get lots of side benefits from that. Kevin, do you think that's likely?
Yeah, I think that you're generally right, Tom. I just don't. I think that people sometimes read a bit too much into someone's reaction to something that was kind of like an off-the-cuff, answer to a big topic like HTML5 and that type of thing. Mm-hmm. It's sad to see a little too much of tea leaf reading and someone just saying didn't work for us. Sure, it works for other people, which you can say about a lot of things, like the Linux desktop. Everyone's always saying that, it's great that Ubuntu's there. Do you run it personally? No, I have a MacBook.
Yeah, right. No, it's a good point. I think it is tempting to want to overparse these things, especially when he's throwing out so many tidbits. And Facebook is so under the microscope right now.
I was thinking about the HTC Cha-Cha is a bit like when Apple did the Moto Rocker, that kind of like, oh, we kind of have a phone. We kind of work together with somebody. But it's not until they actually fully had a solution did they go, okay, we're not going to go back into the phone market until we have something ready to go. Because I don't know if Facebook was burned by that, but they have this sort of phone. It's got the Facebook button, but it's not exactly. So maybe once they figure out the right solution, they would go ahead with it.
All right, let's take a quick break and thank our sponsor, Gazelle. You want that new iPhone? You want maybe a new Lumia, a new Samsung Galaxy S? Before you get any of those phones, you need to sell your used iPhone. And the easiest, the simplest, if you're busy like me, the one that you're going to have to do is Gazelle. Gets you cash, gets it quick. You don't have to spend a lot of time on it. In fact, they even put pictures up there. It's like ordering off the menu at a fast food restaurant. You click on yeah, that looks like the thing I have. Oh, yeah, that's the model I have. That's the carrier I have. And boom, you lock in a quote for 30 days. So go do it right now, GAZELLE.com. The longer you wait, the less valuable your gadgets get. So go lock in that quote now. I'm actually waiting for my box. They're sending me a box to send my phone to them. I've got my quote locked in. They'll let you print out a shipping label if you don't want to wait. And the faster you get the thing to them, the faster you get paid. They pay you really quickly as soon as they get the device from you, and they pay for the shipping. You can get paid by PayPal. You can get paid by check. You can get paid by Amazon gift certificate. You get a 5% bonus if you choose the Amazon gift certificate. So go check it out. Don't wait. Lock in that quote now at Gazelle.com and be ready whenever you make that decision. Pull the trigger on whatever new phone, new iPhone, whatever it is you want to get. Gazelle.com. We thank them for their support of Tech News Today. Onward into the other...
Good time to be talking about Gazelle.
What's that?
Good time to be talking about Gazelle and for Gazelle to be getting the word out.
It's a perfect time for them to be sponsoring the show because with this month, not just the iPhone, but all it's like raining phones out there. Let's talk about Intel. Intel Developers Forum going on. Got a couple of good stories to talk about here. The Haswell chips we mentioned. They gave some details coming early 2013, mid 2013. Kind of depends on who you ask. They're not coming until next year. Intel does this tick-tock sort of rhythm to their releases, and the Haswell chips will be a TOC, which means completely new processor architecture, manufactured using the same 22-nanometer process and 3D Tri-Gate transistors as you saw in Ivy Bridge. There's not going to be a lot of change in the architecture, no change in the key pipelines. L1 and L2 cache will get some bandwidth increase, modest CPU performance improvement. There's some other, for the folks who are really into chips, double theoretical floating point performance, thanks to the advanced vector extensions, which is now AVX2. 2 more ports to the unified reservation station, so you get up to 8 operations per clock cycle. That's up from 6 in Ivy Bridge. But they really focused on power efficiency and graphics performance. Intel claiming laptops could see double the battery life over Ivy Bridge. So that's the people who aren't as into chips. That's the important stuff. We've got a little for everybody here. New power state that's not active. So back into the chip talk. S0, which is your sleep, which is your active state, and then S3 and 4, which are sleep and hibernate. There's now a new state called S0IX, which is active but only using 5% of the power that an idling Sandy Bridge processor would use. For those of you who don't care about all that gobbledygook, reactivation is seamless to the user. So it uses less power and it starts up faster from sleep. Systems on a chip from Haswell are at 10 watts. That's down from 17 watts that Ivy Bridge had. They also added a bunch of low-power interfaces that are typical of ARM, so they're really trying to compete with ARM. The graphics processing gets more hardware, but you won't see revamped architecture. The new GPUs will support DirectX 11.1, OpenCL 1.2, OpenGL 4.0. And there's a lot of stuff about GT3. GT1 and GT2 were available up till now. GT3, according to AnandTech, really boosts the graphics performance. This is the thing that got a lot of people excited. They showed Skyrim on high settings at 1920 by 1080, right next to a current Intel HD 4000 GPU at the same frame rate, could only run 1366 by 768 on medium settings. So the Haswell graphics are blazing here. Also support 4K, video quality engine, allows you to decode video without waking the whole GPU. The translation of all of this, if you're like, okay, you're throwing so much slang at me, what does this mean? You're going to get more powerful tablets that have Haswell chips in them that are power efficient enough to be tablets. You can probably do some serious gaming on Ultrabooks, really lightweight with this powerful graphics processing, and you're going to get a lot longer battery life on your laptops.
Yeah, I mean, when you test out Ultrabooks, I've tested out a whole bunch for before you buy. You look at that battery life, and you want to make sure that this thin and light is going to be able to run all day. And some of the complaints have been that some of these things don't run for a very long time because you have larger displays. They're sucking a lot of power. You need to take power off somewhere. And if Intel can go ahead and have lower power consumption on these Haswell chips, that means that the Ultrabooks, which will be the heavy form factor, because the tablet is the thing that they're really interested in at this point. Getting in the mobile market for Intel has been... Go ahead.
What would we all say is Intel's track record with double the battery life, 10% of the power? I mean, like when Amazon came out with their statistics for the Kindle Fire HD, a lot of people collectively kind of rolled their eyes like, okay, Amazon, twice as fast, half as sluggish, whatever. What do we all think is Intel's track record with promising, doubles and triples and 10%?
I think with Ivy Bridge, they've been quite good about it. That's the thing, because the Sandy Bridge, it was all right, but Ivy Bridge actually gave a lot more battery life and a lot more power. I don't think it was anywhere near the numbers they were saying, but the amount of power you were getting was pretty impressive. And Intel's been trying so desperately to get in the mobile market that they are working. I believe that they are finally going to get to that point where they are efficient enough that they could run in tablets and in phones in a way that they can actually be competitive with ARM.
Yeah, I think they've been pretty close, and even if they're only close, if you get double the power efficiency, maybe you just get close to double. That's still enough to make me pretty excited about it.
Well, that, and we have it's the graphics upgrade that I'm interested in, because if you really want to do anything serious, you need a discrete graphics card. But at this point, if Intel can get on an integrated chip level, if you can have this, the GT3, if it can run games that well, that means on Ultrabooks, you'll be able to do things that probably you couldn't do before. And that makes it more likely that you're actually going to dock a tablet or a Ultrabook to a larger station, because Intel's also going mobile first. You're going to see this in mobile products before you'll see it in the desktop. So it's just, I always wanted just one device I could dock and use it everywhere else. And I think this might be the beginning of that.
Now, the other thing Intel showed off was some products that'll be coming before the Haswell chips, and that Dell with the this voice recognition is getting a lot of buzz as well.
Yeah, Intel announced the Ultrabooks with Nuance's Dragon Assistant beta. Now, this is an assistant. This is not a dictation thing, and it lets you basically command your laptop, as you mentioned. Hello, Dragon, I believe, is the command. Now, Intel showed the dragon. In the demo, Intel showed off that the Ultrabook understood voice commands to show pictures. In San Francisco, results showed up in Google. They also were able to do things like show maps, play music, shop for products. And unlike other products, this is not necessarily going to the internet. So all the processing is done on your machine. So when you're saying a command, it's going to figure it out, especially if you're saying, like, play a song. There's no real reason for it to go back up into the cloud and back down. So that means this processor's got to be pretty powerful. And this is going to come out in Q4 of this year. You're going to see that on that Dell XPS 13. So is this just a natural progression of like the smartphone talking interface, or is this just a gimmick?
I don't know. I mean, I think it's great. I guess they have to have really good voice isolation, because you're not holding the Ultrabook up to your face in order to make sure that you're speaking right into a microphone.
Well, and Padre SJ in the chat room says, I do not want to be in a coffee shop with 30 people screaming at their laptops.
Yeah,
so you
really.
wouldn't hold this up to your face? This is not.
No, you're right. That looks pretty good. That looks pretty good. Well, I guess if you've got certain headphones, that it would allow you to use some, again, not dictation, but more just command-based stuff with your laptop. It seemed, now that I'm sort of talking it through, I guess it does seem a little gimmicky because voice is just hot right now, but I also think that it will be helpful, especially Nuance's products. People like Dragon software, and
I like Nuance's products too, but I think it has to pass the test of whether it's faster for you to do that, or basically Sherlock / search out whatever it is you're looking for. Just has to be faster than that.
So I think part of it is people get used to certain functionality on their phones and their tablets, and they're like, why doesn't my desktop do that? Or why doesn't my laptop do that? And by adding this, it's like, oh, okay, well, it does the same thing. So it just doesn't differentiate the products as much. You're like, oh, okay, well, I could do that. I've been using voice dictation a lot on this MacBook once they added that with Mountain Lion. So you hit the FN key twice, I start saying things in chat. Well, obviously not during the show, but off the show, and I quite like it. It's just sometimes it's faster because I'm usually doing something else.
Yeah, I'm the wrong person to ask because I don't even want to talk to people on my phone.
I can talk to dragons?
And I certainly don't want to talk to my laptop much. But maybe I'll change my mind if it worked really well. I don't know. Let's finish up with a patent story that's a positive thing. It's not about patent wars. It's not about patent peace. It's about a patent that Microsoft filed for a 3D projected game system. It would project images of a game title's environment around a player's room. It's a freaking holodeck, people. We don't usually talk about just filing patents because we never know if they're actually going to turn into real products. But a lot of experts say they think this might actually come out, if not in the next version of Microsoft console. It might come out in the next couple of years. It says in the patent, even when focused on the display, the user may perceive architectural and decorative features of the room the display is in. Such features are typically out of context with respect to the displayed image, muting the entertainment potential. So when you're in the jungle with your first-person shooter, that lampshade just looks out of place. So they're actually going to beam images all over the room, so that your peripheral vision doesn't conflict. It would actually scan the room too and say, like, okay, if there is a lampshade there, we're gonna project an image that makes sense in that contour.
It actually would give a new life to the name Xbox 360. Like if it's actually everywhere you look. But in the patent drawings, like you already need 6 feet of space from the Xbox Connect, and now you have to calibrate the room. You're like, oh well, this room is too small for this. Your jungle environment will not be optimized because your room is 4x5 or something tiny.
Your room is too small for a jungle.
Yeah, it's a cool looking patent, and we saw something close to this. I think at some museum they ran Pac-Man on every surface, and that was pretty cool. I'm kind of curious how this would actually work and what kind of do you have to dim the room or is this super bright projectors or kind of heat? I'm just thinking of the practical concern of the amount of heat a projector generates is a lot, and if you're going to be able to spit this around the entire room, it's going to be pretty hot, or it'll be LED based, and yeah. So I'm just taking the fun out of this. Sorry.
I'm just worried about the safety protocols going offline, and you get shot in your first-person shooter.
This is that's the other part of the patent.
It's just using light. It's not actually a holodeck. I see.
It's got actual bullets in the Kinect this time.
All right. Any other last thoughts on the holodeck, Kevin or Sarah?
No.
It works out great for young dudes who've just gotten their first apartment, and it's all white walls and just an Xbox hooked up to a TV, and you're like, perfect.
Just leave the Xbox on. I didn't even
I
think
can
about
use my 3D projector.
That's perfect. Yeah, I just want to.
Yeah, exactly. I don't need to buy all this furniture.
I live in Skyrim now. Let's move on to the randomizer.
Yeah, exactly.
Randomizer.
Device.com has a story about Le Waf, a large glass carafe that actually lets you smell your food. Not just smell your food, inhale your food through a straw. And it curbs the appetite. They make a liquid that is heated in the bottom. How does this actually work? Anyway, you don't actually drink the liquid, but you put a straw up and you inhale the smell as part of your meal, and then your appetite is abated.
Now, I think this sounds like the worst tease ever created, especially if it's a really good meal and all you're doing is taking a little, food steam out of a straw. But maybe it works, and I would be happy to try it.
I can't afford the steak, or my doctor says I shouldn't eat the steak. I'll just inhale some.
Or, the dessert that I always get.
Oh, yeah.
And really, I just want to taste the dessert. I really just want the one bite. But when you have the whole dessert in front of you, you eat the whole thing. That's the way it works, at least in my world. So maybe all I need is just a little bit of hint of dessert, and everybody's happier and thinner.
A whiff of dessert.
A whiff.
I wonder if you could fool yourself. And if you're smelling something like wine and you start drinking water, does that work? The thing is, taste is attached to smell. So if I'm eating something that's a lousy steak, I'm smelling a great steak. Could I have budget steak thanks to this smell enhancer?
Maybe.
It won't work.
I don't think it's going to work.
I was trying.
Sadly.
Trying to find a use for it.
Talk about gimmicks.
Yeah. They're doing this in Canada, though, at a restaurant.
Hungry.
Also coming to
I
Ultra
can't
Boost.
imagine it doing anything but making me hungry.
Make you hungrier? Because it's supposed to actually satisfy some of your hunger, but you don't think so, huh?
Your stomach's smarter than you give it credit for. It knows you didn't eat a steak.
My stomach's way too smart. And that outfoxes me at every turn.
Yeah.
Let's move on to the calendar.
Nintendo is holding a Wii U press event in New York tomorrow, September 13th, from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. Eastern Time. On Twitter, Nintendo said that the price and release date would be announced tomorrow, so it's going to be a nice announcement with a lot of information. And the Samsung Galaxy S3 Jelly Bean update has been confirmed for Octubre. That's October in another language.
In Lanish. Let's move on to incoming.
Incoming message.
Got a voicemail about one good instance in which it is very beneficial to be able to surf the web and make calls at the same time.
Hey guys, just calling in because I love the show and I appreciate hearing you guys every day. I had a quick comment about the whole AT&T, Verizon, LTE being able to surf the web while on a phone call. I'm a field engineer, so I actually use my Android Razr Max as a mobile hotspot to get online with my laptop, and I find it really useful when I'm in a 4G area to be able to browse the web or update calls as needed while I'm on the phone with tech support or network teams, wherever they need to be. So I just find it really useful to be able to be online and on the phone at the same time. It's very specific for my area, but maybe a lot of people might find that useful as well. Thanks for the show. Keep up the good work, guys.
Thanks, man.
I think a lot of people forget that when you're using a hotspot, that is data, and you want to get a call at the same time.
Totally.
It's like, oh, yeah.
No, that's a good point. Thanks for the call. And finally, Geek wrote in and said, just a heads up, although I do not work for American Airlines, I am a pilot with a different major airline, and I am familiar with their iPads and the cockpit integration. Every pilot must have a very specific backup battery, fully charged, and on board in case of battery failure. Additionally, the pilot must make sure the iPad is fully charged before they start their duty day. So the odds of both iPads failing in flight are pretty slim. Love the show. Wish I could watch it from the flight deck. Well, there's autopilot, so I guess that would be safe. But yeah, this is using the iPad to replace the flight manuals.
They've got backups for their backups.
You know, people who fly airlines, they're pretty good at contingency planning and making sure they don't do unsafe things.
They're also trained.
I respect and appreciate that.
It's not like they're putting like this iPad's going to take care of everything. Okay, and if it fails, you're out of luck.
I hadn't really thought about that. Yeah, no, they think about everything. They really do. All right, that's it for this episode of Tech News Today. Thanks, everybody, for submitting stories at our subreddit, technewstoday.reddit.com. Helps us choose what stories we cover each and every day. And thank you, Kevin Purdy, for taking the time this morning to chat with us, man. It's good to talk to you again.
Thank you very much.
Let folks know where they can find the complete Android guide, just in case they're on the audio podcast and they can't see your lower third.
You can find it at completeandroidguide.com, and we have a Jelly Bean update due to arrive in October, just like the Samsung Galaxy S3. So you'll get all the latest Android information, and if you bought a previous edition, it's only 99 cents to upgrade. So,
oh, nice.
Thank you very much.
Deal. That's it for this show, folks. You can find us on the web, twit.tv/TNT. Email us, TNT@twit.tv, or give us a call, leave us a voicemail. Our phone number is 260-TNT-SHOW. We'll be back tomorrow with Randall Bennett, we think. Now, he says he promises he'll make it. We'll see him and you then.